I was going to wait until the end of March to film this, but there's so many books here already, and if I got more, this would end up being a feature-length film. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife, and today I'm going to show you all of the books that I have received in physical form between the months of January and February. There are quite a few. I did try and reduce my physical TBR for this year, but somehow it seems like I didn't tell my bank balance that, and anytime that I passed a bookstore, I just ended up going straight in. The first book to show you is one that I probably shouldn't have bought because I haven't read the first book in the series yet, but it is The Viking Who Love Me by Julia Quinn. This is the second book in the Bridgerton series, and I know that the second series of Bridgerton is coming out at the end of March. I have got a copy of the first one on my physical TBR already, and this is a slightly different format to the one. I think this is a mass market paperback from the US, whereas the one that I already have has got the actual cover of the Netflix special on it. I had intended to read the first Bridgerton book before I even go and watch the series at all, but I had a couple of points on one of my cards that I can use in a bookshop, and I can use in a load of other shops as well. But I decided this was in a kind of 50% off English language book sale, and I thought, why not treat yourself? Next up are the two books that I brought back with me from going from Dublin Airport back here to Berlin. I went into WH Smith to pick up on some last minute Irish essentials, but also wandered over to the book section and probably shouldn't have done that because I ended up spending about €60 in there between books and just getting some snacks and everything. The first book that caught my eye was A State of Emergency by Richard Chambers. Richard Chambers is a journalist working in Ireland. He works for one of our biggest TV stations back at home. He put together this book over the course of the pandemic to say what it was like living in Ireland throughout the pandemic, the situation that it was in, the regulations and the restrictions that had come in, and how people reacted to it. I think as well there's a lot of people's personal stories that are dotted throughout the book as Richard had been talking to them and hearing what their stories were like when everybody was in a kind of the same boat but not given the same amount of oars. I have heard some things about this. I know that my cousin actually picked this one up, but said that because she was working in one of the places that was mentioned throughout this book, she found it a little bit difficult to read because it was kind of giving her not so much PTSD, but kind of flashbacks to what it was like in the very early days of the pandemic when she was in that situation. But I hadn't any experience of being in Ireland throughout the pandemic. I spent the entirety of the early stages of the pandemic here in Germany. So I have a feeling that reading this book is going to show me what it was like for people actually there, rather than going through what I was hearing on Twitter, what my friends were saying, what my family was saying in our catch-up phone calls. It's going to be a lot more hard-hitting than any of these other experiences I'd had. I wanted to balance that out with something a little bit more light-hearted, so I also picked up A Funny Life by Michael McIntyre. Michael McIntyre is one of my favourite comedians in the UK at the moment. I've watched his Netflix special countless times. I've watched his other specials countless times. I've watched The Big Question. I've watched his other TV show where he invites celebrities on and then texts something to every single member of their contacts book. This is Michael's second autobiography. His first one was called Life and Laughing, and I really enjoyed this one. I don't know how much different this one is going to be, but I have a feeling that it might be picking up from where Life and Laughing left off, and then we're brought around the other aspects of Michael's life and kind of what life has been like for him in the last years after the events of that book were covered, and I'm really excited to see what this one is like. Then let's go on to some of the books that I bought for myself here in Germany. Last weekend, I went on a little kind of tour around the city and ended up wandering into Shakespeare and Sons, which is kind of a bookshop, but also a bagel cafe. I don't know if it's any way related to the Shakespeare and Sons that's in Vienna or the Shakespeare and Sons that's in Paris, but I really loved this place. Not only did I spend €45 between books and some greeting cards and some bookmarks that I wanted to buy, but also when I went up to pay, they gave me a free coffee. So that has absolutely elevated them as one of my favourite bookshops here in the city. Of course, I went and bought a couple of books. There was also a huge line for the bagel section, so I didn't get anything there. But I think the next time, if it's a little bit quieter, I'm definitely going to go in and pick one up. The first book that caught my eye there was Brooklyn by Colm Tóibín. I've actually read this book already, and I've seen the film, and I really enjoyed both of them. But I gave my copy away to a friend of mine who's living in Australia who really wanted to read something that was set in Ireland. We did a book swap of books that are set in our own countries and some snacks from our own countries a couple of years ago. I really loved this book, and I kind of pained with giving it away So I knew that if I had found it again, I really wanted to pick it up and maybe reread it in the next couple of months. I also picked up a copy of Animals by Emma Jane Unsworth. This is going to be my first Emma Jane Unsworth physical book, but I also have a copy of All Adults here on my Kindle. This book follows Laura and Tyler, who have been best friends for such a long time. They know each other completely in and out. However, Laura gets engaged to a man that Tyler absolutely cannot stand. And the whole book is about what is their relationship going to be like when this huge upheaval happens. Can it survive? Or is their relationship going to fall to the side as they start to grow up a little bit more? Then we have one of the book community's biggest darlings of the last maybe 2 years or so, Hamlet by Maggie O'Farrell. I absolutely adore the cover, and that is not the biggest thing that has brought me into it. I've seen a couple of reviews that people have absolutely adored it. I have a copy of this already on my Kindle, and I tried to read it there, but I just didn't gel with it in that format. I think I just need to read the physical copy of it and see if I get on with it a little bit better there. I studied Hamlet for my Leaving Cert over 10 years ago by now, and I really enjoyed the play. I absolutely loved the story of that, and I do know that there isn't so much of a connection to that, but that Hamlet, the character here, A, was a real person who genuinely did pass away at the age of 11, B, was Shakespeare's son, and C, kind of inspired the play of Hamlet, which was one of my favourite Shakespearean works. So I'm hoping that reading it in a physical format is just going to make me enjoy this a little bit more, because I know so many people who have absolutely adored this. Another bookshop in Berlin that I genuinely accidentally stumbled upon, was Love and Other Stories. Like Shakespeare and Sons, this is an English language bookshop. They only sell English language books, but they also sell a couple of things like power banks or bookmarks and things like that. I went on a friend day on Wednesday night to meet a friend that I hadn't seen for such a long time. Both of us now live in Berlin, so we went, met up together, had some food, but I happened upon this bookshop on the way. Turns out she lives directly above it, and that would be an absolute danger for my credit card. When I wandered in, a book that was on my most anticipated list for 2022 caught my eye, When You Get a Chance by Emma Lord. This book is about Millie, who really wants to be a Broadway star. She really wants to have her name up in lights. And there is a huge theatre aspect to it, but there's also apparently a really sweet father-daughter relationship, which is something I absolutely love reading. As well as that, Millie goes back on her father's computer and finds something like his live journal or his Wattpad, and turns out that he knows who her biological mother is, that she's never met, and she goes and tries and connects with her and sees if they can make a relationship together. I've read the other two Emma Lord books so far. I would really love to go back and reread both of them, especially You Have a Match, but I'm really excited to read this one, and hopefully this one is going to be an absolute success for me too. That same friend invited me to her apartment. We had another glass of wine before I went home, and I had a sneaky look at her bookshelves, and something really stood out to me. Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You? I've purposely not looked at a single review for this one, because I know that Sally Rooney's books can be a little bit hit or miss for a lot of people. I know if you enjoyed Normal People, you won't really enjoy Conversations and Friends, and vice versa. But I have absolutely no idea what this book is about. As it's a Sally Rooney book, I'm assuming that there's going to be a mention of Trinity College in here. I'm assuming that it's going to be a kind of a look at how friendships work in Ireland. I am kind of apprehensive to read this one, but also I'm just going to go into it with a completely clean palette and just give it a try. Then on to the books that I was gifted. First of all is a book that I was gifted by my lovely friend Michelle from Michelle's Library. She went through my Amazon wishlist a couple of weeks ago, just as a kind of a, you're one of my really close friends and I'm thinking of you thing, which I absolutely adore of her. And she picked out The Singles Table by Sarah Desai. I already have the two previous books on this one. I've actually just recently finished The Marriage Game, the first book in the series, and you can see my thoughts on that in my most recent Books and Brews video. I am not really too sure what this one is about. I know that this is going to be quite a steamy romance because there are a little bit of steamy scenes in The Marriage Game as I've just finished it. But I'm really excited to see if the continuation of Indian food, Indian themes, cultures, traditions really pops up here again. Finally, I've got a book that I was gifted not by the publisher but by the author themselves. This is The Letter Home by Rachel English. Like Richard Chambers, Rachel English is a broadcast journalist working in Ireland. She presents Morning Ireland, one of our biggest morning shows on Irish radio. This is Rachel's, I think, 5th or 6th book, and I have read 4 of her books already and absolutely loved all of them. She has got a really amazing way of connecting people together and telling their stories in such a phenomenal way. This book follows 2 women. First is Jessie, who lives in Dublin but has lost pretty much everything. She's lost her job, she has lost her apartment, so she decides to go back to the little village in the west of Ireland that she grows up. And while she's back there, she connects with a friend who is researching into a woman who left Ireland during the famine of the 1840s and emigrated to America. Then on the other side of the Atlantic, we're following Caitlin, who's doing a little bit more of research into her family tree. The only thing that she knows is that her family and her ancestors left Ireland in the 1800s. But could there be a connection between Caitlin's ancestors and the research that Jessie's friend is doing? Okay, I'm gonna try and do this and not die. Oh, this is so difficult and I haven't even picked them up yet. Okay, I have all of these books now and I'm gonna try and read them. Where do you think that I should start? Have you read any of these yet so far? Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.